introduce. Okay, guys, so if you don't know who I am, I think I know a lot of the faces in here. What's your name? Alicia, very nice. Okay, I'm Alicia Rose, and I run the Academic Success Center here. And I'm just going to kind of go over some study habits, some tips and tricks to help you out. Maybe you struggle with studying, maybe it's something you've never really found a perfection to, and you're still working on it. So that's kind of what I'm going to do with you today. So our goals, I want to make sure you have academic success. You know, maybe something today will spark something that you can take with you, and you can try to put in for a different class, see if it works for studying for that class, and I hope it does. I want you to see the different things you can do for maybe your learning style, whether you're an auditory learner, a visual learner, or a kinesthetic, a movement learner, and improve your study habits, because everyone can improve on study habits. Nobody's got a perfect study. You may have one that works for you, but it may not work for every class, okay? So that's kind of the goals today. And we're gonna just have some takeaways. So I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna go over how to prioritize, okay? How to eliminate distractions, and how to create a study atmosphere. And I'll call for a little bit of discussion sometimes, just because I think it helps to hear others' ideas, and someone might have an idea in here you haven't had before, or someone may relate to you as well. So let's go over some different habits for studying, okay? So reading environment. So to study, you have to read, right? And it's required for every college course. So you have to create an atmosphere that you can study in, right? So being able to read is one thing, right? But being able to read to understand what you're reading is another. Those are two different things, right? Because has anyone ever read something, but it just kind of like passed through your mind and you just forgot it probably 5 seconds later? That's just reading to read. But reading to understand is actually taking the time to create an environment where you can focus and understand what you're reading, okay? Does anyone have, whenever you're getting ready to study, or you're getting ready to read, if you read books, or you're gonna read a textbook, does anyone have anything they do to make sure their environment's ready? A quiet room, okay? Is everyone kind of, a quiet room is what they do? Is there anything else that you have to do to make sure you have a good environment to read in? Okay, technology, putting any distractions that can take your mind away, that will really create a good environment for you to read to understand, because you have to be focused just solely on what you're reading. And I'll go over some more things that can help create a good environment in a few slides. Okay, writing environment. So studying does not only fall under memorizing, right? Studying also includes writing papers, okay? You also have to be able to create a writing environment, okay? And a lot of times you study, you're writing. You know, if you have to fill out a study guide, you're writing. And you have to be able to be in the mindset to write down stuff, okay? If you rewrite notes, or you're going to answer some questions, or you have to answer some paragraphs that you have to memorize, you have to still be in a writer's mindset, okay? When you're getting ready to write an essay, all right, is there anything different that you do whenever you're needing to get into the writing mood? Is there anything you guys have to do specifically?
I do it.
Okay. Yeah, some people, and that's a really big thing. Whenever I read and study, when I read and study, I have to listen to music, even when I read a book, just for fun, because the music keeps me zoned in. When I can hear people talking, or like there's like little noises going on, oh, I'm out of focus. Okay, so yeah, that's really can help. Yes. Yeah, supplying enough detail. Okay, so really getting yourself ready to have as much detail to write, right? So planning, having a good plan. So when you write, you're not running out of things to write about, okay? Very good. So habit tips, all right? So when you're wanting to read, so you sit down with your textbook, pen, pencil, highlighters. Those are just little things that can help you start to activate reading mode. And writing habits, you also want to create small writing goals, okay? And I can help you with those. My English tutor is really good, Ash. She's really good at helping you with English and with writing goals. But there are a lot of factors that can help with a reading environment. So like we said, silence. Some people need complete silence to read or to study and read, right? And some people can use music, whichever keeps you from drifting off. Okay, cell phone, laptop on do not disturb. Sometimes we're studying off our laptops or our iPads. So you got to make sure those are on do not disturb, because I know whenever I'm working on something at work and I get an email from someone, I immediately go to open that email. And then I get off from what I was doing, forget I was working on something, and then that thing gets pushed off, okay? And making sure you have the right materials. I don't know if anyone is like me, but when I sit down to do something, I forget I have it, I don't have something, I go to get it, I get off topic, right? And I start doing something way out of the ordinary, and all I needed was to grab something to help me, and now I've taken time away from that thing I wanted to do, okay? And writing goals, when you're writing, it can be so easy to mindlessly write, okay? Or not have anything to write about because you don't have anything to look forward to, okay? So writing goals can be really important to help you check off as you write, okay? So before you write, make some goals for yourself. All right, I'm gonna write the introduction today. Okay, I'm gonna get my outline done, okay? Because then you can check off and see you're making progress, which makes the writing process more enjoyable. Just like anything else we do in life, motivation and direction are important for any task, especially writing. If you don't have motivation, you're not going to want to write. If you don't have direction, you are not going to want to write. Okay, you got to know what you're working towards. And that's the same thing with studying. What do you want to get done in that moment? What do you want to achieve from studying? Are you going for the bare minimum? Are you going for knowing everything? Okay. There are some different places you can study here on campus if you need anywhere. Okay, we have the library study room. Okay, if you go upstairs in the library, there are the little glass rooms that you can study in. You can come here in the ASC at any time. Okay, and we have these tables you're sitting at. We have computers available. We are open until 9 p.m. on 3 days of the week. Okay. And then for SSS, if you're an SSS student, they do have a study lab that you can use. So if you want to know more about that, I'll get you hooked up with SSS. Okay, so now I'm going to go over with you some techniques, okay? There's a couple techniques that are specific to studying that have been proven to work, and I'll go over those with you. So we'll go over mind mapping, which if you're a visual learner and you like to see what you're studying and make connections by seeing it, mind mapping is really good. We have the Feynman technique, which is good for all kinds of learners. There's active learning, which engages the active engagement with what you're studying. So if you're someone who can't just look at what you're studying or doesn't listen well with it, okay, that's going to be great for you. And auditory learning. So that's good for people who like to listen more than they like to see or be doing something. So mind maps. All right. So these are like, okay, when you were in elementary school or middle school, didn't anyone make the maps where you had to like make webs, right? Okay, you probably did them with writing a lot, but they can also be helpful in studying. Okay, so they're webs, or they can be like boxes like you see on the screen that connect, and they centralize around one specific idea. Then they break off into sub-ideas, and then you break off into details about those ideas under the central idea. okay? So here's some steps to use this for studying, okay? You're going to establish your central ideas. So if you're given a study guide and your professor says you need to study about, you need to study the water cycle, right? Your central idea is going to be the water cycle, okay? You're going to break off into the subtopics of the water cycle. So maybe the steps of it, okay? Runoff, whatever the steps are. Then you're going to break off those steps of the water cycle into more about those specific little steps. Okay, so you're breaking off and simplifying things, because if I just say the water cycle, not everyone may know each exact step and what exact step does. But when you create a mind map or a web, you're breaking it down and chunking and creating a visual for yourself to study easier and picture in your brain. Okay? That same thing can also be used for writing. Okay, so say your professor tells you they want you to write about basketball. Okay, basketball is going to be in your middle of your mind map, of your web. You're going to break off into your main points you want to talk about for basketball. So maybe you want to talk about the rules, scoring, and equipment. Then you're going to break off those three things, those three webs, into your details that you'll write about. Okay, so you're going to have to write about the equipment. So you'll start writing the equipment next under equipment. You'll write the rules next to rules. Okay, it's a visual to help you plan. Okay, so what is mind mapping good for? Visualization. Okay, I don't know if you like to picture things in your mind, but I love being able to picture something in my mind I've looked at, and mind mapping really does that. So like I said, on the screen, these boxes, you could create a mind map with them. Okay, you could go right to left, you could go top to bottom, okay, whatever makes a connection best in your mind, okay? And it organizes in a way that's appealing to you. You don't want to study in a way that's not appealing or interesting to you, okay? Memory retention. So this helps you create a quicker pathway for the brain to recall information. And it uses chunking. So that's when you take information and you break it into small chunks to study. Because your brain cannot study 3 pages of information in one sitting. Okay? You've got to break it up. You got to make chunks. And that's what mind maps are really good for with the webs. Connections. Okay, so it helps your brain see the path, right? It helps your brain see how basketball connects to rules and how rules connect to you can't foul. Okay, it helps you see how the water cycle connects to the step of runoff and how what runoff connects next to. Okay, organization. Okay, it is specific to you, right? It helps you organize your thoughts in a way that makes sense to you. It does not have to make sense to anyone else. How you study is how works best for you. Nobody can say that doesn't work. If you can memorize it and it helps you understand it, it can help you, okay? Exploration. This is mostly when you're writing, okay? But it helps you think deeper, right? It helps you say, okay, I got to go learn about the rules of basketball, okay? Or the plant or the water cycle. I don't know enough about runoff, so let me go discover more about runoff and write it down. It makes you explore, okay? And it retains interest. So the visual, right? That visual for some of us is just perfect, okay? Because everything's in a nice placed area. Nothing's random. Everything has a connection, okay? And it can adapt to you. Again, most important thing when we're going through these study things, what is appealing to you, okay? All right, now we have the Feynman technique. This one is kind of a fancy name for what typical studying is. Okay, so your step 1 is to study and explain. So you're going to choose a topic. right? To study and understand. So if your test is over the Civil War, right? You're going to look at the Civil War and you are going to go through your material and read about the Civil War, right? Maybe that's your textbook. Maybe that's your notes. You are going to read specifically about the Civil War, okay? And then you are going to take that information, you're going to go to another piece of paper, and you're going to write what you learned in your own words, okay? So what you read, how did you process it, and now what do you remember? Without looking back at it, right? So you're going to read the material, and you're going to go write down what you understood, okay? You're going to then, step 2, find the gaps. You're going to read what you wrote down, and you are going to look at what you read and say, what did I miss? What information did I lack? What information did I not process that I need to process? Okay? You're going to highlight those things. So your brain sees significance of, I need to go back and know that. Step 3, go back and study it. We don't want to just identify the gaps that we didn't know just to do it for fun. You are doing that to go back and restudy it. That doesn't mean you don't restudy the things you did know. You need to know those. But add in those things that you didn't know. Go back over them. Step 4, you're going to organize. You're going to put it in an order. Okay? The stuff that you knew and you learned, now make it make sense for your brain. Okay? Then you're just going to go back through and keep restudying. Right? So what does this look like with a study guide? Because most professors give you a study guide. Okay? It may have just questions you have to answer. It may be just vocabulary words where the professor says, tell me the definitions. The professor may say, tell me everything about this that we have in our notes. Okay? So you're going to go through the study guide chunks at a time. Right? If your study guide is 50 questions or 50 vocabulary words, nobody can memorize 50 vocabulary words and their definitions in one sitting. That is so hard for your brain to do. So you have to chunk it up. So maybe you start with the first 5, okay? You're going to go through and read those vocabulary words and definitions and repeat them to yourself, okay? So you're going to say this word means this. Go on to the next one. This word means this. Go back to the top and repeat. Try to say the first one without looking back at it before you move on. This is chunking. Okay? Do it for the first 5, whether it's questions. Study the first 5 questions. See how long it takes you to go back through and answer those questions without looking. Then move on to the next 5 questions. See if you can answer those 5, add in the top 5, and try to get 10 now. Once you have 10, you'll be able to add another 5. You just studied 15 of the questions and now know them because you chunked them up. Okay? You're not going to learn 15 answers and actually understand them and find a place in your brain for them if you just rush through them. Okay? You can also rewrite information, okay? What I used to do in college, when I get a study guide of questions, is I wouldn't write the answers on the study guide. I'd get a separate piece of paper, and I'd write the answers on a separate piece of paper, because then I could use the study guide as a quiz every time, okay? And I didn't have the answers there. So I'd write the answers out, okay? And then I'd go through and study just like that. Okay, number 1, what is la da 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 da? Okay, the answer is this. Then I move on. I do 5 at a time. Okay, you can do 3 at a time. You can do 2 at a time. I would look at those, and then I would go back and quiz myself on that first 5. Did I get it? Yes. All right, I'm going to move on. Okay, same thing with vocabulary words and definitions. Okay, but as you continue to get through your study guide, see the questions you can't get right. So maybe you've got 15, okay? And number 3 is starting to give you trouble, right? Number 3 is the only one you can't remember, but you can remember the other 12. Highlight number 3. Number 3 is the one you're going to keep going back to every single time. And you're going to make sure you study number 3 really well, because that one's just not sitting in your brain very well. That's like with the Feynman technique. You are reading about your material, you're going through your study guide and studying it, and then you're going back and quizzing yourself and finding your gaps. Which ones can I just not connect? Which one can I not just grasp? But in the end, in a 40-question study guide, if you can grasp 35 of them, and there's 5 giving you trouble, well, heck, that's 5 you know you need to study a lot harder, and that's better than not knowing 40 of them, okay? So, okay, active learners, okay? If you're someone who likes to be involved and engaged in your learning, mnemonic devices, okay? So that's taking the first letter and turning them into words. So, I don't know if anyone still uses this, but I learned PEMDAS in math. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, okay? That is a mnemonic device, okay? Roy bit. Some people like saying that. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, okay? Those are mnemonic devices. Are they able to be used for everything? No. But for those really hard concepts, yes, they can be. And movements, okay? Movements can be really, really good for if you're an active learner, okay? So maybe you use your hands. Maybe you use sounds, okay? Can you play those sounds during your test? Absolutely not. But in your head, you can play the sounds, right? You don't have to play it out loud, but your head's gonna remember those sounds, and then it's gonna connect information to those sounds, okay? Same thing with movement, okay? I know a lot of people with math love using their hands. Because in math, when you're taking your test, you can use your hands. Okay, you can do that with anything. Anything that makes your brain actually understand it. Yeah. Math is great with songs. Yeah, no, coming up with just little catchy tunes, they don't actually have to make any sense. But when you can put them to a song, I know when I taught my 5th graders, I taught them mean, median, mode to a song, and it was a insane sounding song, but they all remembered it. And I still remember it to this day because I learned it from my teacher. Okay, but it's just those little things that your brain can hook the information onto and like. Your brain remembers things you like. Okay, so if you like the song and it somehow gets hooked in your brain with that information, use it. If you are a listening learner, okay, you're one that likes to hear. Repeating the stuff with your eyes closed, okay? This goes with your study guide. Whenever I said you go through your study guide and you finally are grasping onto it, you're quizzing yourself, when you close your eyes, you're just listening to yourself repeat. And your brain is grasping more and more onto what you say, okay? Find a study buddy. Great resource, okay? Have someone you can talk the information to. It's like whenever you have a conversation with someone, and there's something about that conversation you're remembering about because you said it, and you could hear yourself say it. That's great. Repetition and hearing yourself say things makes your brain so much more likely to remember it, okay? Reading assignments aloud. This is the same thing. Listen to yourself. You're gonna sound so crazy, but it's like with music. When you sing the song, you're gonna remember it. When you sing those little tiny words, you keep remembering, and then you remember more of the song, and then you remember more of the song. Next thing you know, you've memorized the whole song. But that's because you're singing it out loud, okay? Okay, so now I'm going into an open discussion, but there are a couple things I want to end with, before we go into discussion or any questions, these are just some reminders for study, okay? I taught public ed for about 4 years. I'm in my 2nd year here, and I do teach a habitude class, okay? And I've seen a lot of students come in with their studying techniques that they don't find work out for them very well. And I've kind of noted on them. Studying the night before is not beneficial, right? I've had students say to me, but it just sticks so much easier, and the next day, I have a better chance at remembering it. You're not actually understanding it. And your brain's not going to find a place to store it if you're not understanding it. Problem with that also is, Unit 4 that you just studied for probably is on your cumulative exam at the end of the semester. If you didn't actually study it to understand it and store it in your brain, when that final comes, you got to restudy it all. And if you would have taken the time to store it in your brain, when you study for that final, you're not starting from scratch, okay? Let your brain retain the information. Study days before. The day you get a study guide, start on it. I'm not saying you have to study everything in one day, but if the professor gives you the study guide on a Monday, your test is Friday. Start on Monday. Chunk it, okay? You don't have to study the entire thing. Start writing out the answers. So then on Tuesday, you got the answers written out. What can you do? Start reading over it, chunking it. Start with 1 through 5. Okay? Wednesday, maybe you have up to 15 memorized. Now you can work on 15 through 30. Thursday, say it's a 30-question exam. You've got all that memorized, and now you're just restudying before the test. That is so much better than the night before trying to chunk, read, and study, and identify what you don't know. So much better for your brain. As much as you think, I just don't have time, it takes 20 minutes. Your brain doesn't love sitting for more than 30 minutes to an hour. So if you're going to say, I'm going to study for 4 hours, your brain is going to be like, no, you're not. Because after hour 1, you're checked out. You're wondering what's on your phone, wondering what you're going to eat for dinner, okay? Take 30 minutes, take a break, okay? Go over 1 through 15, set a timer of 30 minutes, go take a break, come back, do a little more. This gives your brain the ability to process and settle information too. The brain needs time. If you study the night before, your brain's going to go to sleep. You're going to wake up. It's had no time to process it when you have a 9 AM test. Okay? Flashcards. You don't need index cards. Sticky notes. You can cut pieces of paper, notebook paper, whatever. You don't got to buy index cards. I have students come up to me and they say, do you have the index cards? I say, no, but you can cut pieces of paper that look like index cards and they do the same thing. Okay? Index cards are good for on the go. Okay? They serve the same as your study guide. You have to find your study guide first. Okay? Set timers and set goals. Okay? Like I said, your brain can't process a lot of things in 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, your brain can start checking out. Okay? Set a timer. Because then when you say, I'm going to study for an hour feels like forever. But when you have a timer and you say, before that timer goes off, I'm going to focus on this. Your brain's more likely to focus because it knows it'll remind you when an hour's passed. You're not constantly checking the clock and getting distracted. Okay? Set goals. I'm going to get through 1 through 15 today. I'm going to get through 1 through 5 in this 20 minutes. I'm going to start studying today, and I'm going to study 20 minutes a day. Those little goals is the motivation to study. You can't just go into saying, all right, well, we'll see what I get done. Your brain has no direction to go. Give your brain direction and set goals. Look forward to something, okay? If you say, I'm going to sit down and see how long I can study for, your brain's doesn't have any determination to do it. Okay, you don't either. Okay, so set yourself some goals. If use your resources. Canva, you can make flashcards on there. You can make a PowerPoint to help you study. Okay, use PowerPoint. Okay, if you like visuals, make a PowerPoint and quiz yourself. Okay, remember, when you start making it, you're memorizing. So when you're doing vocabulary words and you get on PowerPoint and you type the word runoff, you got to type the definition. So you're repeating to yourself, right? You're going through the process of the word, definition, you're repeating it. That's helping you study. Okay, so then when you go back through it, you're like, ooh, I'm typing this. This goes with runoff. Okay, Quizlet, I know there are some free ones. There's also resources out there that have made a Quizlet already. Don't just depend on it. Make sure it uses the information you need, okay? But don't try to reinvent the wheel if you don't have to, okay? You can also email me, okay? If you're like, hey, Ms. Rose, I need to study for a chemistry test. I have no idea how to study for it. I'll get you hooked up with one of our tutors, okay? Our tutors have taken the classes already. They've studied for the tests. They can help you figure out a way to remember it that made it work for them, and you can build off of it and make your own, okay? You can also come to me and say, I'm a visual learner. What are some ways I can study? I'll shoot back some different ways to study for you, okay? But use your resources. Don't just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to read these notes and hope it sticks. There are different ways to study than just the one way you think works, okay? So, last thing, find someone to keep you accountable, right? Even if that's just, and ask a friend that's actually going to do it, right? Don't just say to someone, hey, text me and make sure I study. That's probably not yet. Find someone who is determined to help you. Hey, will you text me and make sure, text me at this time and ask me what I've gotten done on studying. And if I don't text back and say I have anything studied, then blah, blah, blah. Set a goal. Set an accountability thing, okay? But have someone that's going to help you, whether it's me, whether it's setting up with a tutor. Hey, I'm going to come back for a tutoring appointment on Friday, and can you quiz me and help me see what I don't know? Okay? Because you don't want to show up to that tutoring appointment not knowing anything. You know you have someone to live up to. You know you made a promise. You're going to want to fulfill it. You don't want to look like you didn't know anything. So your brain wants to achieve that goal. Okay? Find someone to quiz you. Okay? It could be anyone. That's why I never wrote on my study guides, because I would give them the study guide and the question and the answers, and then they could quiz me. Okay? Because sometimes we want to look at the answers immediately when we don't know. But when someone else is quizzing us, we have to take the time to dig to recall. Okay? So, questions? Anyone got? Yeah, go there.
How much do you think classroom engagement improves?
Like, oh, getting in with discussions? Discussions are great. Okay? If your professor is up there waiting for you to answer, answer. Even if you don't know it, but you've compiled some information from what they've said, okay? It shows you're actively listening. So if you say, when the professor asks a question in your next class, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to try to answer it. You're going to listen more likely because you want to know what the answer is. So your brain's going to listen to what the professor's talking about. So when the question comes, you're ready to answer it. Discussions are so great because your brain is having to process the information. If you're just sitting there listening, you're never speaking out loud, you're just mindlessly listening, your brain could also be thinking about what are we eating for lunch, okay? But when you're listening to intentionally listen, so you can answer a question when discussing, your brain storing it is going to process it, you're going to answer the question. You may not be totally right, but that's the whole point. Because the professor will help you make sense of it so you have the right information. Does that make sense? Any more questions? Yeah. Okay. So like if you've passed the concept already,
Yeah, and maybe it's just part of like one it's like
so you're learning more things at once.
Yes.
Mind maps. That's where those webs and maps come so in handy because, so you're talking about one process, right? So you're gonna start with, you can even make it like a chain, right? So you could put process of ATP. Then you're gonna put the first step. Then you're gonna put under that first step, what goes with that first step. Then you're gonna go second step, what only goes with that second step. Third step, your brain then is visualizing as you break it down. Because again, if we just read, right, put out your textbook, process of ATP. Okay, step one, this is this. Step two, this is this. Okay, that means this. You're not taking the time to understand it then. But when you take the time to write out the steps, your brain is going to start remembering them because it's writing them down. The activity of just writing your notes, that's why I tell people to write notes, because the brain to pencil connection is amazing. That's why I don't love typing notes as much as it's faster. Computers, not as good mind to content engagement. But when you're taking the time to write, there's so much more science behind how you memorize. So with that one, definitely with chunking and making some kind of visual. Because with processes, you've got to see how all the steps combine. So then when you're trying to move on to another thing, you can always go back. Right? If you just read it, to go back to it, you just gotta read it again. But to see that map again, your brain's gonna pull back out, hey, we've read this before. We've seen this before. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, what's your next one? My rule of thumb that I always found was the day I got a study guide, or even if they don't give you a study guide, the day you learn a chapter, start making some kind of outline. You're not going to be on the test. Your professor most likely gives notes and says, this is going to be on the test. Whatever your professor puts in PowerPoint slides, probably going to be on the test or they wouldn't have put it there. So, say you take your notes, right? Maybe the next day, maybe the day after, okay? Go into your notes and start making some kind of study guide for yourself. Okay? Take 10, 15 minutes to do that. So when you go to study later, you've already seen how you've chunked it. You've already seen how you've made it accessible to your head, to your brain. Okay? If it's science and you know that your professor gives you a 50-question study guide, then you probably want to start as far in advance as you can. I don't even care if it's the easiest thing you've ever learned. Okay? It might be a class where you know everything already. You start studying days in advance, think of how much time you would have extra. You want that extra time. Okay? If your professor gives you it the week before, start on it. Because guess what? You may finish it in 3 days, and then you have still a week to study. And then most people think, oh, I just have no time to study, so I save it for 2 days before. Think of how much more time you would have being confident, knowing you know the information, so now you have time before the test to relax and let your brain process instead of being so high-strung about it. So really deciphering it, train your brain. Think of it as training your brain to want to study days before, right? Because if we do it, you know, we study a week before for this class, or we study the night before for this class, your brain's not learning consistency. So when you train your brain to study days before, you get in the habit of starting to make an outline study guide, studying becomes more enjoyable. It becomes easier. You may think the content's harder, but the process and act of studying just becomes natural because it's not like, ugh, I gotta figure out how to study for this. No, your brain already knows how it's gonna study it. Your brain already knows We're getting in the act of studying, so we gotta get in the mindset of it, and it doesn't take you forever to build yourself up to one step. Okay, what's your last one? Yeah, so if they don't give you a study guide, which that can happen a lot, chunk your notes, right? Go through your notes and highlight the things that you probably need to know. Because again, if your professor gives you it to take notes on, most likely you need to know, okay? The Feynman technique can be really good with that. Okay, when you go through your notes, okay, go back to your textbook if you have a textbook. Read a little bit more about that note just to make sure you're getting enough details, okay? And like I said, begin rereading over your notes and creating a little outline, okay? So take your notes over ATP. Go to your notes over ATP and find a way to make it into a study guide. You don't have to be given a study guide. You can make a study guide out of anything. Okay, so take your notes and say, how can I make a study guide out of chapter 4? The process of creating it is the process of repeating it. The process of repeating is storing in your brain. Then when you go back and the professor says, all right, we got a chapter 4, 5, and 6. You've already made a study guide for chapter 4 and chapter 5. You just learned chapter 6. Now all you gotta do is make a study guide for it. Okay? But just know you can make a study guide out of anything, especially your notes, especially a textbook. When you go read a chapter, I'm sure they have vocabulary words in it. Just go start studying those. Start trying to memorize them, just to understand them. And if you're not on the test, your brain understands them at least, because they might help you with another thing. Okay? Does that make sense? Questions? Okay. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. Again, if you ever need help, we have tutors available who can help you develop studying techniques. You can email me, amrose@nwosu.edu. I will help you find a way to study best for your test based on maybe the factors you give me. And just if you ever need anything, come see us here in the ASC, all right? All right, well, thank you guys. Yeah, go ahead. You guys can take a second one too if you need.